Wow, a whole lot happening today. Lots to get through. First of all, there's a link in my description for Octopus Energy. If you change your energy supplier and you use my link, you'll get 50 quid and I'll get 50 quid. So I did a video the other day and it's about why certain people keep sticking their nose in EV sales, why they're bigging certain companies up, why they keep pushing EVs, why they're doing their best to say yes they're selling when clearly they're not. So one part of them one day comes out with a story saying EVs, you know, 1 in 4 vehicles that are being registered have got a plug on them. Okay, but also when you take into account that some of those vehicles with a plug have also got a petrol engine, and if you're going to count them with the plugs, with the battery side, then you've got to count them with the petrols too. In fact, you've got to count them more with the petrols because people will do more miles on the petrol. Why would they do it? Why would they have somebody specifically in charge of electric vehicles putting information out? You know, why would they do it? During the war, Lord Haw-Haw, propaganda. And that was used to try and demoralise our troops, which it didn't. It just wound them up. It wound them up and made them fight even harder. You see, because some propaganda, that's what it can achieve. It doesn't convince people. What it does do is turn them against you. And stories like that will turn people against anybody with any common sense. You know, if you're an EV nut, then, you know, I've had discussions and I've put stuff in black and white, which I think, like, that's a hammer blow to your argument. The stuff's in black and white. And then, oh, I don't believe anything they say. Oh, right, okay. You don't believe anything they say in the Telegraph, but you believe everything that the full of shit show say. You know, be impartial. If you're impartial, you start to look at it, the scales are like, you know, EV bullshit. EV bullshit. Truth. So, what have they got to gain? Well, I'm glad you asked, because now I'm going to tell you. Fleet news, concentrate on fleets. Free falling used EV values costing leasing sector millions of pounds. Well, how can they? How can it be costing leasing? Why is it EVs? Why is petrol not costing them millions of pounds? Because petrols aren't dropping like a stone and EVs are. If EVs are costing the leasing sector millions of pounds, how much do you think they'll be costing hire car firms? Yeah? Now, don't feel sorry for them. Who you should be feeling sorry for is private buyers, because when we were Vauxhall dealers, Vauxhall did a deal with NatWest. I mentioned this a few times. Vauxhall dealers got 17% off the new Cavalier. NatWest got 34%, I think. From memory, don't shoot me if I'm wrong, but it was a very big discount. Now, the other thing is, we were a main Vauxhall dealer. Do you know that before we got our first Cavalier, in fact, the first Cavalier I ever sold was to a guy, it was a white one, and it was to a guy, well, Mr. Waddilove. That was his name, Mr. Waddilove. And that was the first one I sold, the first Cavalier that I sold. Before Mr. Waddilove got his car delivered to our garage, NatWest had their vehicles and they were already putting them in BCA and making money. NatWest, in fact, were a Vauxhall dealer. And they were running Cavaliers for about 3 to 6 months, and then sticking them in an auction, making money. We still hadn't got our first one, our first order, and our orders were delayed. Leasing companies, they will get more discount than the dealers. And they're still losing money. Just imagine how much discount more than a private they get. And they're losing millions of pounds. How much would a private lose? If you bought one off a dealer, because they're like super trade. They're not leasing companies, they're super trade. They get a massive discount or a bonus. More than the dealers who have to fix them and buy all sorts of equipment, stock the bloody things. You know, they have to stock them in order to sell them. The leasing companies just get them when they want them. They don't have to stock anything. They don't have tools to keep buying. They don't have big fancy gym palaces, salesmen, sales managers, dealer principals, partsmen, valeters, admin staff. They don't have any of that in the overheads. All they do is, you want a car, when do you want it from? Right, okay. Right, thanks very much. Yeah, you booked in. That's it. All they have is some person on a phone. Or now, it's not even a phone. It's all done automatically. All you have to do is have somebody there to hand the keys over. And I assume when a robot gets round to doing that, there'll be no staff at all. They'll have no overheads. And they still can't make money. How do you expect the dealers to make money if they can't, with no overheads? They can't keep up with the depreciation. They can't charge enough to offset the depreciation. And why can't they charge enough to offset the depreciation if that's the going rate? Because petrols don't depreciate as much. People prefer petrols. They don't want an electric vehicle to hire. They want to jump in it, put petrol in, go, get so far, put more petrol in, go further, keep going. They don't want to be sitting looking for bloody electric chargers. So, let's go further into the story. This is 7th of July, 3 days ago. The UK electric vehicle EV future hangs in balance, with used values falling relentlessly, costing the fleet and leasing sector hundreds of millions of pounds. That's according to the annual Road to Zero report, published by the British Vehicle Rental and Leasing Association, BVRLA. I've ripped their leaflet to pieces before, honestly. There's one, EV myths, and then there's the BVR. So they put out EV myths, you'll say £1,500 a year, your battery won't catch fire, there's more cars under 20,000, an EV will last longer. As I've always said, an EV lasts the life of the battery, not the battery lasts the life of the car. The life of the car is when the battery goes, because then it's worthless. It's an economic write-off. Okay? Which explores decarbonisation progress across vehicle supply, demand and infrastructure. Toby Poston, Chief Executive at BVRLA, said the UK's transition to a zero-emission future is in its most challenging period. On the plot, they've been found out. It was all right when people were believing the lies. Now they've been found out. It's challenging. Okay. The Ponzi scheme. You can pre-register so many cars, but sooner or later, when you run out of money, you can only pre-register cars as you've sold the other ones that you've pre-registered, and you've got some money. And if that dries up, then you can't. You're constipated. EV constipation, which most dealers have these days. In fact, with EV constipation, they'll be able to get a Motability car, won't they? So they'll be able to get an EV of their own for nothing. So why buy one? On the plus side, corporate demand for electric cars remains solid, and salary sacrifice schemes continue to democratise access to EVs for hard-to-reach demographics. They're bribed to buy them. If there wasn't a bribe and you got the same benefits with a petrol, they'd buy petrol. Offsetting that positivity is what's happening in the used market. Used EV values are falling relentlessly. EVs, hang on, EVs. Used EV prices down by over 7,000, but sales nearly triple, destroying values on an epic scale. The average used EV price has fallen 46% between 2021 and 2024, compared to 19% for cars with an internal combustion engine. This death by 1,000 cuts, according to Poston, is costing the industry hundreds of millions of pounds and eroding confidence. We know the government is listening, he added. The 1.8 billion committed to support EV uptake last month could make a difference, and we'll continue to work with the government to highlight how this money can achieve the best return on investment. Well, it was 1.4 billion actually. Overall, the 2025 report shows how targeted incentives are continuing to support electric vehicle adoption via leasing, be that personal or business. Where comparable incentives are not available, such as in the rental sector or among van users, progress remains slow. So they've not got enough bribes. Further still, utilisation rates of electric vehicles in the rental sector have decreased year on year, underlying how challenging the transition is in that part of the industry, says the BVRLA. Business leasing drives zero emissions uptake. Demand for business leasing is being driven by effective incentives bought, the buying customers, and continued growth in battery electric vehicle adoption amongst company car and salary sacrifice schemes, says the BVRLA. More than 70,000 BEV vehicles were delivered via salary sacrifice schemes in 2024. 70,000, not really a lot, is it? Business contract hire, BCH, the largest leasing product, also contributes to this trend, with market share of electric vehicles increasing from 37% in 2024 to 44% in 2025, and the share of new registrations increasing from 44 to 54%. Battery electric vans, meanwhile, reached a 7.6 market share in May 2025, up from 4.7 in June 2024, which is reflected in BVRLA business leasing figures, showing a rise from 3.4% in Q4 2023 to 6.6% in Q4 2024. This is despite 11.8% fall in total LCV registrations in May, marking the sixth consecutive month of decline. Now, the trouble is, the ZEV mandate target is 16%. Are they going to keep selling petrol and diesels when they can't sell enough electric vehicles? What decides how many petrol and diesel vehicles they can sell is how many EVs they can give away. And if they can give away so many EVs, they can then sell a couple of petrols and diesels as well. Anyway, all the rest of this is crap. All this BVRLA shit, the transition to zero-emission cars, vans and HCVs brings huge opportunities to future-proof our world-class automotive and logistics sectors and secure the long-term sustainable growth this country needs. No, what it's doing is killing the motoring industry, completely stone dead. I welcome BVRLA's Road to Zero report and look forward to continuing to work alongside industry on this journey to deliver our joint goal of greener and more prosperous future. Now, it's your goal. It's not the motor trade's goal at all. The motor trade's goal is to make cars and make money. That's their goal. They would do that if they were just selling petrol and diesels. Just go here. Used EV sales hit record share of the UK's second-hand car market. The UK's used car market has hit a major milestone in early 2025 for the first time since 2019. More than 2 million vehicles were sold in the first quarter. Battery electric vehicles, 65,850 units, compared to 1.15 million petrol units, 680,000 diesel units, 98,830 hybrids, and 23,540 plug-in hybrids. Contributing factors to EV growth. Well, it's not even worth talking about, is it? But there you go. Several factors are thought to be contributing to the rise in used EV transactions. More EVs entering the used car market as new car supply improves. There's a glut of new cars. Glut. It's not improved. There's a glut. There's far too many. They can't sell them. So they're having to discount them. And what they do when they discount them, they also pre-register them. And when they pre-register them, it counts as a used car with a massive discount. So it counts as a used car. It's a new car with a massive discount with delivery miles. And when you sell it, you've sold one brand new car, and when you sell it, it's used. So it's really a new car that's sold as a new and a used car. So when it's sold as a used car, it goes towards contributing factors to EV growth. Falling used EV prices, with some models down 10% year on year. Some models are down 10% month on month. Wider model variety, including newer, longer range options. Well, yeah, but really speaking, most people buy like 3-year-old vehicles, don't they? So those aren't actually entering the used car market, the real used car market, because the other ones, as I've showed you before, these 3-year-old Fiat 500s with 10 miles on, never left the dealer. When that sells, it'll sell as a used vehicle. So all that's rubbish. Here we go. BVRLA Road to Zero report. Welcome to the latest edition of the Road to Zero report. Now this report is very, very long, so I'm just going to go through a few things. Here we go. Looks like it's made for kids, look. All bubbles and stuff, and cars, vans, trucks, cars. I mean, this is just the most annoying flipping site ever. Where incentives are right, especially salary sacrifice and company cars, strong growth continues. OEM discounts due to ZEV mandate pressures, so they're having to give them away. They're not selling them, they're giving them away. Led to increased demand for personal leasing, but it is unclear if this will hold. Despite significant improvements in vehicle affordability, demand remains low when there are no incentives. This is the BVRLA, not me. Don't shoot me. Demand remains low when there's no incentives, because it's a financial decision to buy an EV. It's not an emotive one. You don't buy it because you want to go out country lanes Sunday afternoon, get your driving gloves on, polish the car, go up to Trafford Bowland, enjoy yourself. EVs aren't for enjoying yourself, they're for miserable people. Let's face it, these people on here, they are miserable. All the ones, you look at them EV people, the ones that are blooming crowing about EVs, they look truly and thoroughly miserable. The used BEV market is a continued threat as supply into the second-hand space outpaces demand and prices continue to slump, showing no sign of stabilising. KPIs for demand. Rental customer demand. 2000, parked. Metric. Red. ZEV utilisation in rental fleet. Despite growth in the ZEV fleet in 2025, ZEV utilisation relative to the overall rental fleet has decreased for both cars. 69% it's decreased, and vans 77% compared to 2024. Cars 73% and vans 81%. This remains lower than the total utilisation rate of 83% for cars and 86% for vans. Cost of ownership, brakes on. Now, I'm assuming that's not as bad as parked, but cost of ownership, 2023, 24 and 25 brakes on. Metric. Cost of fuel and energy, red, not good. Cost of fuel and energy, home, green. Cost of vehicle, red. Cost of vehicle. Despite the growth in lower price BEVs, the median price of a new BEV car has increased slightly from $49,165 in 2024 to $49,760 in 2025. This remains higher compared to an ICE car at £37,438. So what, 12 grand more? Used market, brakes on, parked. So according to this, the used market, even though everybody's telling you it's increasing and doing better and vehicles are stabilising, it's parked. Supply versus demand, residual value impact, red. Demand versus supply of used BEVs, red. Used BEV sell times, red. All going down, all bad. Supply versus demand, BEVs have depreciated more than ICE. Month over month in 2025, in cumulative terms, BEV values have fallen by 11.3% in the last 12 months, compared to 1.7% for diesel and a plus 0.3% gain for petrol. Demand versus supply of used BEVs. Over the past year, the supply of EVs entering the market has surged by 51%, exceeding the record levels of EV demand. There's hardly any selling, honestly. The amount of EVs selling is negligible, but the supply has gone up 51%. What do you think that's going to do to residual values? It's going to knock them down, isn't it? Exceeding the record levels of EV demand, which has grown 22%. So the demand's grown 22%, but supply has increased 51%. The supply has increased by double what the demand's increased by. I would be very sceptical about the demand, the actual demand, because I think there's something going on there too. There's some messing about with sales figures. Used BEV sell times. BEVs went from being the fastest selling fuel type in the second half of last year to the slowest selling in the first half of 2025. And again, I would question that they were actually the fastest selling in last year because I don't think they were. I think, again, cars disappeared, and I showed you a car the other day. It disappeared in April and then came back on in early July. So where it's been, I think it's been having a rest from being advertised, to be honest. Petrol, they're selling the fastest. Did you know rental demand? That means nothing. There's the demand versus supply graphic, just in case you couldn't understand what I was saying. EVs went from being the fastest selling fuel type in the second half of last year to the slowest in the first half of 2025. Falling residual values impacts the total ownership cost of new EVs and by extension could be hampering uptake of new EVs. Basically, they're too expensive. All the people that say, oh, you can't say that EVs are too dear and then too cheap at the same time, but you actually can, because both of them are a bad thing. To dear in a nice car and then the same year and mileage vehicle, a nice car and an EV, and the EV is cheaper, it's lost more of its value, it's depreciated more, which means the first owner has taken a big hit, which then means that it doesn't matter how much you've saved on electric, when you actually do the whole life costs, it costs you more than running a nice, and it's more inconvenient. That's it. And plus there's the fear of the unknown. There's a story out saying that EV sales in the UK are outperforming Europe or our European friends. But here, the BVRLA, and as I say, they get all the figures, they're in the BVRLA, the Auto Trader and you know, all the big boys. Used BEV market incentive. Evidence suggests that the UK market for used BEVs is performing worse than in any other European countries. Data reveals the average used BEV price has fallen 46% between 2021 and 2024, compared to 19% for ICE. So way over double. By comparison, the average used BEV price fell by 9% in France, 12% in Italy, and 26% in Germany over the same period. Falling residual values impacts the total ownership cost of new EVs, and by extension could be hampering uptake of new EVs and slowing the transition to zero-emission motoring. Yeah, because unless there's a massive incentive to buy a new one, i.e. your tax, so overall your tax saving counteracts what you're going to lose in residual value, then you wouldn't buy one. So people have to be bribed to get one. The UK used car market has unique characteristics. Being right-hand drive and separated by sea, imports and exports are lower than much of Europe. ICDP identified there are 3.9 used car sales for each new vehicle sale, compared to 2.3 in Germany, which is a similar sized new market. Many new vehicles and the majority of BEVs are first sold on lease schemes, resulting in a healthy supply of quality used vehicles less than 5-year-old. In the used market, demand is lacking for the more expensive premium vehicles. mention has been made of competitiveness of Chinese brands entering the new market. While the EU has introduced tariffs that increase their costs, there are no plans to do so in the UK because the UK government is stupid, and more low-cost new BEVs could further erode used BEV demands. It's cheaper to get a new one on PCP than it is to get a used one. So of course, what are people going to buy? They're going to want a brand new shiny vehicle outside. But it's not just that, it's also the warranty. You know, it's a big worry. If you buy an ICE car and you pay 9% interest on your finance, over the term of the contract, your ICE car hasn't dropped as much. So your overall costs are not as high as if you get an electric vehicle on 0% interest that tanks like I don't know what every month. You know, it's a financial decision. You have to take everything into account, not just the interest rate. If you're getting a zero, well, to me, if you're getting zero rate interest on something, it's because they won't sell. Then you have to ask yourself why it's not selling, why they're not trying to make a few quid out of your own interest if they're selling you the vehicle, and they're going through all the ball ache of making finance forms out and getting you propped and then worrying about ticking this box and doing a course every 6 months to make sure that you know what you're talking about. You know, it's a ball ache, trust me. Here we go. Special thanks to contributors: Auto Trader, All Star, BCA, Cap HPI, Fleet Assist, Hubject, New Automotive, Octopus Electroverse, Offgem, Power, ZapMap. So as you can see, as I've said in other videos, these people tell you one thing, but they really know the truth. And when they actually print the truth, you can see what huge lies they tell with a propaganda. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.